Have you ever paused to ask yourself, what is the true cost of bearing your emotions in silence? What happens when you constantly strive to be good, strong, or independent, not for yourself but for the world's approval? From a young age, society teaches women a dangerous lesson. In order to be accepted, to be loved, they must soften themselves, reshape who they are, and push their emotions deep down into the shadows. Vulnerability, intuition, softness. These traits, once natural and beautiful, become masked in exchange for survival. But what's the price? It's the quiet disappearance of the vibrant, intuitive, curious little girl within, the very root of a woman's true feminine power. That child was not weak. She was radiant, alive, and deeply connected to her inner truth. Yet, in the process of adapting to expectations, she is often silenced and forgotten. The damage isn't just emotional, it's spiritual. Carl Jung understood this loss profoundly. He emphasized that this disconnection isn't your fault, it's the result of an unhealed inner child. According to Jung, as long as that little girl stays locked in the unconscious, your feminine energy, your truest self, remains caged and subdued. So the question arises, how do you awaken her? How do you reach back through the years and retrieve the part of you that was left behind? The part that didn't learn to survive but simply knew how to feel? How do you reconnect with your natural gentleness, your quiet power, and your intuitive depth? Not just to exist, but to live fully. Jung left us clues. To be truly free, you must return, not to the person you are today, but to the place where it all began. The moment where that innocent little girl disappeared into the shadows. In this journey, I will gently guide you back to that hidden place. And if you stay with me until the end, you may find that this isn't just another video you stumbled upon by chance. It could be something far more meaningful. Perhaps it's the quiet calling your soul has been waiting for. 1. Psychological mechanism, the abandoned child. When a grown woman feels emotionally drained in her relationships, or when she experiences loneliness, even in a room full of people, she may quietly whisper to herself, maybe I'm too emotional. Maybe I'm just not strong enough. These aren't weaknesses. According to Jung, these are not random feelings. They are echoes from a past self that is still alive within you, still calling out. In analytical psychology, Jung proposed that the human psyche isn't a single unified thing. It's a complex web, a living system composed of the ego, the personal unconscious, and the collective unconscious. Within this system lie hidden fragments, forgotten, rejected, or silenced aspects of ourselves. And one of the most critical fragments within a woman is her inner child, the little girl who once loved freely, felt deeply, and was hurt. That child doesn't simply vanish. She doesn't disappear, because pain doesn't disappear. It just moves deeper. She retreats into a dark, hidden corner of your psyche, the unconscious. From there, she continues to feel what she always did, unloved, unseen, and unsafe. But here's the twist. Even though she is hidden, she is still in control. It is from this invisible space that she influences your emotions, your reactions, even the decisions you think you're making with your adult mind. Think about this. Have you ever forced yourself to act like everything was fine after being ignored by someone you care about? Have you pretended not to be hurt when someone belittled you? Or felt like the air was being sucked out of your lungs when you were excluded or rejected, over something as small as being left out of a group chat or a meeting? That overreaction, that ache, it wasn't the adult you, it was that little girl resurfacing, reacting, repeating her old wounds in a new form. Because she was never truly heard, every similar situation tears the same scar open again, and deeper. Jung called this hidden pain the shadow, the part of ourselves we refuse to see or were never allowed to express. For women, this inner child often becomes buried within that shadow. She carries a haunting weight, the fear of abandonment, the belief that she's invisible, and the conditioned thought that her worth depends solely on pleasing others. These beliefs don't emerge in adulthood. They are shaped early, When a little girl's tears are dismissed, when her emotions are brushed off, or when she is compared, corrected, and made to feel that she is somehow too much or not enough. You might think those are just small childhood moments, but to a child's undeveloped mind, they are earthquakes. A child doesn't rationalize that something is wrong with her environment. She internalizes that she is the problem. And from there, the blueprint is etched into her psychology. Please others to be loved or risk being yourself and be abandoned. This is the first unconscious mechanism that causes many women to lose themselves from a very young age. That early pain doesn't simply disappear. It silently transforms into a hidden life script, one that operates beneath awareness and influences everything. It's not gone, it's written into the background of your being, quietly shaping the choices you make. You keep attracting relationships that echo your earliest wounds. You fall deeply in love with someone emotionally unavailable, someone distant and cold, eerily similar to the father who never looked at you with warmth. At work, you find yourself under a boss who constantly criticizes you, awakening the same ache of never being enough, the same feeling you once had when your mother compared you to others. Does it feel like a pattern that keeps replaying? It's not a coincidence. Carl Jung called this psychological loop unconscious repetition, or more precisely, repetition compulsion. Your mind unknowingly tries to recreate those painful early experiences, clinging to the secret hope that this time the story will end differently, that this time healing will occur. But without awareness, all you do is relive the same suffering. You're not healing, you're reopening the wound. And here lies the real danger. You begin to believe this cycle is your destiny. You tell yourself that maybe you're just unlucky in love, or that success must always come at the cost of personal peace. You convince yourself that life is meant to be endured, not enjoyed. But that's not fate. It's an unresolved past, repeating itself. Jung stated it with piercing clarity. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Adding to this inner chaos is the role of the ego, the self, that helps you adapt to life, build a public image, and accomplish goals. But what happens when the inner child is deeply wounded? The ego doesn't just help, it overcompensates. It becomes a protective armor, a shield made of achievements and control. You become that strong, capable, independent woman who relies on no one. You hold everything together, but deep inside, you're exhausted. Mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Why? Because you're constantly bracing yourself. You're hiding a soft, fragile part of you, the little girl who was once so hurt and never truly comforted. Picture this, a 35-year-old woman who is financially secure, in a respected position, admired by peers. But when it comes to love, she spirals. When someone shows affection, she panics, terrified of loss. When she's left, she's paralyzed with pain, as though her entire world has crumbled. She can command boardrooms, lead projects, and negotiate with top executives. But in private, with the person she loves most, she's unable to speak honestly about her feelings. Because beneath it all, she isn't loving like a grown woman. She's loving like a little girl, desperately reaching for the father who never held her with tenderness. Can you see yourself in this story? If so, please share your thoughts in the comments. Your words might be the gentle wake-up call someone else needs, someone silently struggling to be seen, to be understood, to be loved. This psychological pattern is incredibly widespread yet barely recognized. Society never taught women to connect with their inner world. It only taught them to be good enough to be accepted, good enough to be loved. But the more you try to earn love, the further you drift from your authentic self. Jung believed that true wholeness doesn't come from cutting off parts of ourselves, but from integrating our inner opposites. That's why the little girl in your unconscious must be gently brought into the light, not so she can take over your life, but so you can finally hear her voice and understand her needs. That's when something begins to shift. You start to realize, oh, I react this way because I was silenced as a child, or I pushed so hard because I once believed I wasn't enough. And when the light of awareness touches the darkest places of your soul, that little girl softens. She doesn't vanish, but she no longer controls you. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, but it begins the moment you pause and say to yourself, "There's a part of me that's still hurting." That's the turning point. From that moment, the unconscious no longer dictates your path. You begin to reclaim control. Healing is not about erasing your past, but learning to make peace with it. And the very first step is to look honestly and gently at that abandoned little girl with all the honesty and gentleness you can muster. Because if you don't, there will always be a part of you tucked away, silent and unseen, still waiting. Waiting to be heard, to be loved, while on the outside you keep building a picture-perfect life, but inside you feel that quiet emptiness, that ache you can't explain. The moment you begin listening to that little girl, when you dare to touch the most vulnerable part of your inner world, something else is revealed. That these old wounds didn't just disrupt your relationships. They've made you lose something far more sacred, your connection to your original feminine essence. Number 2, the blocked feminine energy. No one is born disconnected from their feminine nature. It is imprinted in the soul, like a lighthouse guiding ships through the fog. It is the source of your intuition, your creativity, your gentleness, your openness to connection. But over time, that natural energy becomes muted. It is slowly suffocated beneath society's demands, the roles you are expected to perform. Be strong, but never weak. Be beautiful, but not too striking. Be accomplished, but not overly confident. And under these pressures, your feminine essence doesn't disappear, it simply retreats. In its place, layers form from unhealed wounds. Carl Jung called this a process of detachment from the archetypal self, where the deepest, most authentic part of your soul, the part that holds your truest identity, is locked away, lying dormant, waiting for the day it will be awakened and embraced. Femininity is not just an outer quality, it is a spiritual state of being. Jung referred to it as thema, a profound, gentle, inner energy that connects us to emotion, to intuition, and to the vast depth of the subconscious. Yet for many women, thema becomes hidden beneath layers of fear of being judged, fear of getting hurt, fear of appearing vulnerable or weak. And when the inner little girl has been wounded, it is often this sacred feminine energy that is the first to be shut away. A girl who was told she was too sensitive, who was scolded for crying too much, criticized for being too delicate, or even laughed at for dreaming big, grows up learning an unconscious lesson. Emotions are dangerous, dreams are naive, and softness must be masked. To feel safe, she learns to suppress her emotions, to hide her natural gentleness, and to present herself as calm, rational, and in control at all times. But what is the hidden cost of this adaptation? It is a deep fracture from the very source of her creativity, from the natural, flowing rhythm of her soul. Feminine energy is not about external appearance or societal definitions of gender. It is something sacred, intrinsic, and timeless, a living current within each of us. It's the part of the soul that allows us to receive love, to move with the natural rhythm of life rather than constantly forcing it. It is that soft, intuitive whisper that says, "Slow down, you are safe." It is the playfulness of spontaneous laughter, the sensuality of being fully present in your body, the vulnerability that connects deeply with others, and the beauty of simply existing without the need to prove anything. But for so many women, this energy is shut down early in life. Perhaps you were raised to believe that emotions were chaotic, that being too expressive was dangerous, that showing softness made you weak, or that wanting too much made you unworthy. Perhaps you lived in an environment where logic was praised and intuition dismissed, where productivity was everything and sensitivity was seen as a flaw. And so, the inner child, once vibrant and free, who danced in the sunlight, dreamed with abandon, and cried without shame, slowly began to shrink. She learned to hide her light, to trade joy for performance, to wear strength like armor, not realizing that this armor was also burying her truth. Jung taught that the archetype of the inner child is the root of our freedom, our creativity, and our emotional vitality. So if you find it hard to relax, if you can't fully enjoy pleasure without guilt, or struggle to express your femininity without fear, please understand, you are not broken, you are simply blocked. You've been trying to survive in a world that told you to abandon the deepest parts of yourself, and now it's time to go back. Not to become who you were, but to heal that inner little girl and let her guide you forward, back into the woman you were always meant to be. Imagine a small, gentle stream flowing through a quiet valley. In its natural state, it winds effortlessly around stones and bends, cool and clear, following the landscape with grace. It moves by instinct, because that's what water does. But one day, the stream meets a massive boulder. It doesn't understand the obstacle, but it knows it must adapt to survive. So it finds cracks, slips through gaps, twists and curves around resistance. Over time, it begins to believe that if it flows too freely, more barriers will rise. A woman's feminine energy is like that stream, at times soft, at times powerful, but always meant to flow freely. Yet over the years, many women have imposed countless rules upon themselves. Rules like, I must be strong at all costs, or I'm only valuable when I'm pleasing others. And like the blocked stream, their deepest essence no longer reaches the surface. For the stream to flow naturally again, a woman must begin to feel safe in her own body, in her own heart, in the rawness of her emotions. But how can she feel safe opening her heart when the inner child inside her was never loved unconditionally? She becomes cautious. She learns to build fortresses of logic and control. She stops receiving love and starts managing it, measuring, analyzing, always doubting. She believes these walls are protection, but doesn't realize they're also a prison, trapping her most beautiful and essential feminine energy inside. True feminine energy doesn't thrive through force. It isn't activated by effort or achievement. It awakens through surrender, through presence, through trust. But a woman who carries the memory of being hurt, misunderstood, or abandoned cannot surrender easily. She is always alert, always calculating, always needing to be sure before she opens her heart. And in those moments, she drifts away from her feminine essence, not because she lacks it, but because she was once taught that living in it was dangerous. Think back. When was the last time you held back your emotions out of fear they'd be dismissed? Or when you chose silence instead of expressing a need just to avoid rejection? That was the moment your feminine energy dimmed again. And the saddest part? You might think this is maturity, that you've grown, that you've become stronger. But in reality, what you're doing is repeating a childhood survival pattern, the same one that taught you to hide who you are just to feel safe. Carl Jung didn't view the restoration of feminine energy as a moral obligation, but as a sacred spiritual task. It is about coming home to your soul, through acceptance, through compassion, integration of the shadow. This is the moment when you find the courage to sit with the parts of yourself that were once labeled weak, useless, or overly emotional. And instead of pushing them away, you softly say, I see you. You have a right to exist. You are me. And when you do this, when you finally stop rejecting those hidden parts of yourself, something extraordinary begins to unfold. A quiet miracle takes root. You start to transform from within. You begin to feel not just surface feelings, but deep, grounded emotion. You begin to create, not from fear or approval seeking, but from truth. You begin to love, not with anxious clinging or guarded hesitation, but with a freedom that doesn't fear loss. No longer do you feel the need to chase recognition. You no longer have to prove your worth or fight for space. Instead, you begin to shine effortlessly from a place deep inside, a place that never runs dry. That quiet light is your feminine essence, the same one that's been dormant within you for far too long. And from that awakening, a deeper journey begins, not one of striving to become something else, but of finally returning to who you truly are. Number 3, the process of individuation. Carl Jung never believed that the purpose of life was to become the best version of yourself, as modern society often promotes. His teachings were never about perfection or moral superiority. He didn't urge people to squeeze themselves into ideal versions or perform acts of forced improvement. Instead, Jung saw the goal of spiritual development as wholeness, not flawlessness. The path to that wholeness? It is known as individuation, or more precisely, the sacred journey of returning to your true, original self. Individuation isn't about adding new qualities or reinventing who you are. It's about peeling away everything that doesn't belong to you. It's about releasing the borrowed beliefs you picked up from others, the roles you perform just to be accepted, and the protective layers you built to survive the world. It's about facing the shadow, the neglected, dismissed, or even despised parts of yourself, and welcoming them home as rightful pieces of your being. It's the moment when the inner little girl, your feminine essence, and even forgotten memories that once seemed small or unimportant are brought into the light of your awareness. Individuation is not a grand vision filled with dazzling light. It's a slow, humbling descent inward, a journey down into your roots, to the dark soil where your earliest wounds live. It is here you confront the pain, make peace with what has been, and learn to live with the full range of who you are, the strong and the fragile, the rational and the intuitive, the shadow and the light. And only when these parts are integrated, truly accepted and united, do you step out of a fragmented existence where you're always trying to be someone else and into a life that is fully your own. A woman who bravely walked this path once said, "I lived as if I were wearing a mask for 30 years. I always did what others expected, always smiled, even when I was breaking inside. But when I began to return to the little girl within me, the parts I used to be ashamed of, I realized I had never truly lived. And from that moment, I knew I could never go back." Yes, the process of individuation is far from easy. There will be phases when you feel lost, unanchored, no longer fitting into the old world, yet not quite sure who you are in the new. But that sense of disorientation, it's not a failure, it's a sign of transformation. Jung referred to it as the symbolic death, the death of the old, false self to allow your true self to be born. And in the midst of that confusion, you may begin to taste something new, a profound freedom. You no longer feel the desperate need to be accepted, because for the first time, you have accepted yourself. This is what Jung emphasized so clearly. You were not born to become an ideal version of someone else's expectations. You were born to become yourself, whole, unique, and full of beautiful contradictions, a person no one else can define. The journey of individuation is the roadmap that leads you home. It is the path where you stop running from your wounds and begin to live in truth. Healing the inner child is not just a therapeutic technique. It is a homecoming, a bold, radical act of self-love. It means recognizing that every unhealed wound, every buried emotion, and every suppressed need will continue to echo through your relationships, your choices, and your sense of self-worth until you meet them with compassion. You don't need to chase after more information or collect more external skills. What you truly need is to gently peel away the layers you've built to hide the pain of the little girl inside you, not through another book or productivity method, but by returning to where it all began, by meeting the child within you, the one who once held your entire essence, long before the world told her to hide. Number 4, the journey of connecting with the inner child. Exercise 1, recognizing the inner child. The first and gentlest step in this sacred healing journey is learning to see your inner child, not as a vague idea, but as a living, breathing presence within you. She still feels, she still hopes, she still longs for love and safety. Begin by finding a childhood photo of yourself, one that stirs something in your heart. Hold it in your hands. Look at that small face. Gaze deeply into those eyes. What do you see? innocence, curiosity, fear, wonder, or perhaps a mixture of joy and hidden sorrow. Let whatever feelings arise come gently. Don't rush. Don't judge. Then ask yourself softly, what did this little girl dream about? What did she believe the world could be? What made her laugh uncontrollably? And more painfully, what made her cry alone in the dark? Then, take a moment to write her a letter, not from the voice of an adult who knows better, but from someone who finally sees her. Speak to her with warmth and truth. Say what she always longed to hear. You are loved. You are enough. I am so proud of you. This letter isn't just symbolic, it's sacred. It's the beginning of a bridge, rebuilding the connection between who you are today and the child who is still waiting to be acknowledged, embraced, and understood. Exercise 2. Listening to her needs. Many of our deepest emotional wounds come from needs that were never met in childhood. Love that was withheld, safety that was never felt, or validation that never arrived. And these unmet needs, they don't vanish with time. They linger in your nervous system, in your patterns, in your relationships, whispering, "See me, don't abandon me again." To begin healing these old echoes, find a quiet, undisturbed place, somewhere you feel safe, still, and present. Close your eyes. Place one hand gently on your heart and take a deep, intentional breath. Allow the world around you to fade, little by little, until it's just you and the rhythm of your breathing. Now, with gentleness and openness, invite your inner child to come forward. Picture her as clearly as you can. See her in detail. What is she wearing? What does her face look like? Is she standing tall or hiding? Is she shy, distant, angry, silent, or perhaps sad? Let the image become vivid in your mind. Then ask her, quietly, but with deep sincerity, "What do you need from me right now?" And then, listen. Don't rush. Don't force an answer. Don't censor whatever rises. You might hear a whisper, a faint sob, or an old memory that suddenly returns. You might not hear words at all, just a wave of feeling or tears rising before language can form. Whatever arises, honor it. Write it down. Let the thoughts and feelings spill out. Let them flow freely, without judgment. This is not about fixing her or solving her problems. It's about making her feel, maybe for the very first time, that she is seen, that she is heard, and that she matters. This simple act of inner listening does more than soften your heart. It begins to restore the most sacred relationship you will ever have, the relationship with yourself. As you practice meeting your own emotional needs with genuine care, patience, and gentleness, something quiet and beautiful begins to happen. You start to reclaim the innocence, the quiet wisdom, and the radiant essence that was never really lost. It was simply hidden under years of pressure, of performance, of trying to become the person the world expected you to be. Exercise 3. Becoming your mother. If you grew up without the love, validation, or emotional safety you truly needed, that kind of wound doesn't simply fade away with time. It doesn't vanish with adulthood. It lives in the hidden layers of your psyche, quietly shaping how you react, how you retreat, and how often you stay silent. But here is a powerful truth. You can become the parent your inner child always wished for. Start by noticing your inner dialogue. Pay attention to how you speak to yourself, especially when you make a mistake, fall short, or feel vulnerable. Is your voice inside kind, or is it sharp, impatient, critical? Would you ever speak that way to a little girl who is scared or crying? Probably not. So why do we speak to ourselves that way? It's time to rewrite that inner narrative. It's time to show yourself the kindness you've always deserved. Close your eyes and picture your inner child again. Maybe she's holding a worn-out stuffed animal. Maybe her eyes are filled with silent tears. Maybe she's just waiting, waiting to be seen. Look into her eyes and speak the words she's waited a lifetime to hear. You are so loved. You matter. You don't need to earn rest. You are not too much. You are exactly right. And when you begin to treat yourself with the care, the warmth, and the acceptance of a loving mother, something profound begins to shift. You stop begging others to love you the way you long to be loved. You stop waiting for permission to feel worthy. You stop measuring your value by how others treat you. This is what it means to practice conscious nurturing. It's not about pretending your past wasn't painful. It's about meeting yourself now, with compassion, exactly where you are. You become the safe place, the calm presence, the consistent love your younger self needed, but never had. And when you commit to nurturing yourself with tenderness instead of criticism, with softness instead of self-punishment, you begin to feel something you may not have felt in years. A quiet, peaceful wholeness. A stillness that comes only when you know, in your bones, that you are finally, fully accepted by yourself. Exercise 4. Honoring your feminine essence. To truly honor and reconnect with your feminine energy, you must first slow down and turn inward. Ask yourself gently, what would bring me joy right now? Not what is expected of you, but what's productive. Not what pleases others, but what would actually nourish your soul in this very moment. Carve out a small, sacred space in your day, just for you. A moment where no one else's needs matter, where you give yourself full permission to simply be. This is your time to come alive again. Maybe it's letting your bare feet dance freely across your living room floor to a song that stirs something wild and playful in you. Maybe it's painting without any goal, letting your feelings pour onto the canvas in colors, lines, and textures. Maybe it's just sitting quietly with a warm cup of tea, feeling the stillness settle in, sensing the power of being present in your own body. Do something that awakens the softness, the playfulness, the creativity that the world once tried to tame in you. And most importantly, let go of the need to control everything. Femininity cannot bloom inside the constraints of rigidity and pressure. It thrives in openness, in flow, in trust. Trust in your body. Trust in your intuition. Trust in your timing. And trust in your worth. As you begin to truly honor your feminine essence, something miraculous unfolds. You return to a version of yourself that is more alive, more magnetic, and more you than ever before. Because the truth is, you don't need to become anything new. You don't have to achieve a better version of yourself to be worthy. What you truly need is to remember. Remember who you were before the world taught you to forget. Exercise 5. Breaking the wound of rejection. One of the deepest emotional wounds we carry, often carefully hidden behind masks like perfectionism, people-pleasing, or emotional detachment, is the fear of rejection. And it almost never begins in adulthood. This wound is planted in childhood, often subtly, and it grows over time. Perhaps you were only celebrated when you were quiet, polite, or high-achieving. Perhaps love and attention came with conditions. Perhaps you learned that your tears were too much, or that your emotions were inconvenient. And so, you began to believe that being fully yourself meant risking love. You started associating your authenticity with danger, with the threat of being excluded, dismissed, or abandoned. To be accepted, you began to edit yourself. You quieted your voice. You filtered your feelings. You began to erase pieces of your true self, bit by bit. But here is one of the most powerful truths you may ever learn. You never needed to change who you are to be loved. You never did. If you're still here, still reading and resonating with this message, please comment with the number 1 to let me know you're walking this path with me. Now, take a gentle moment. Let your breath slow. Recall a memory where you felt deeply rejected by a parent, a friend, a partner, or even society itself. Let it rise to the surface without judgment. Then softly ask yourself, did that rejection truly define my worth? An answer from your soul, not your fear. No, I am worthy of love simply because I exist. Rejection, more often than not, is not a reflection of you. It is a mirror of someone else's pain, a reflection of their fear, their limitations, their unhealed wounds. Their inability to love you the way you needed has nothing to do with your lovability. True healing begins the moment you stop internalizing the projections of others. When you stop believing that someone's inability to embrace you means you were unworthy. It begins when you stop running from the fear of not being enough and return to the sacred truth that has always been waiting for you. You have always been enough. Exercise 6. Reconnecting with feminine energy through the inner child. To truly awaken and unlock your feminine energy, you must return, softly and without judgment, to the most innocent, untamed, and alive parts of yourself. Think back. Was there a time, however brief, when you felt wild and free? When joy wasn't planned or performed, but just was? Maybe you were twirling barefoot in the backyard. Maybe you painted with colors that didn't match and didn't care. Maybe you sang at the top of your lungs, or lay in the grass with wide eyes, staring at the sky, dreaming of worlds unseen. Close your eyes and revisit that moment. Where were you? What were you doing? And most importantly, who were you before the world told you to become someone else? Now, ask yourself, what parts of my childhood made me feel most alive? What moments, games, or habits made you feel most like you? Let your heart answer. Make a list. Write it down. Skipping rope, dancing in the kitchen, writing messy poems, building pillow forts, dressing up in wild costumes, singing songs that made no sense. Now, choose one thing from that list, just one, and do it this week. No excuses, no judgment, no need to make it perfect. We create space for your inner child to breathe again. Because the truth is, those playful, soulful activities weren't meaningless. They weren't childish. They were medicine. They were the natural, spontaneous expression of your feminine energy, before the world told you to tone it down. As you begin to reclaim these forgotten pieces of yourself, a powerful shift occurs. You start to remember the woman you were always meant to be, radiant, intuitive, magnetic, and free. Exercise 7. Allowing yourself to be without fear of judgment. So many of us were raised to perform rather than be. We were taught to be agreeable, to hide our joy when it was too much, to hide our tears when they made others uncomfortable, to hide our truth when it didn't fit the mold. And so, over time, we learned to keep our light dimmed, to lock away our natural radiance. Why? Because we feared judgment more than we craved freedom. But what if you could begin to let go of that fear? Start by choosing one area in your life, just one, where you feel muted, where your soul longs to express something true, but your mind quickly whispers, "Be careful." Maybe you want to dance in your living room or speak your truth at work. Maybe you want to wear something bold or write something raw and real, but something holds you back. Now ask yourself gently, where did this fear come from? Who taught me it's unsafe to be fully myself? Who told me I needed to shrink in order to be accepted? Then, take one small step to challenge that belief. Dance, even if your steps are awkward. Cry, even if no one understands why. Laugh loudly. Write what your heart says without editing. Speak truthfully, even if it doesn't sound perfect. Because when you allow yourself to simply be, you reconnect with the little girl who once lived with joy in her bones. The girl who sang off-key without shame, who wore mismatched clothes with pride, who didn't need permission to shine, because she just did. Let her guide you back home. Exercise 8. Practicing joy without guilt. Most of us carry an invisible burden, a quiet, lifelong belief that joy must be earned. that pleasure is selfish. That's the story many of us were told, explicitly or silently reinforced. That rest must be earned, that joy is indulgent, that if you're not being productive, then you're somehow wasting time or being lazy. Somewhere along the way, we absorbed the belief that feeling good without accomplishing something first was wrong, that joy had to be justified, that playfulness, rest, and emotional ease were luxuries for those who had already done enough. But let's be clear, that belief isn't truly yours. It is inherited, a legacy passed down through generations, shaped by a world that glorifies burnout and shames softness. It's a form of conditioning, an outdated relic from a time when self-denial was praised and self-expression was punished. Yet your soul doesn't thrive in deprivation. It blooms in joy. So today, I invite you to do something both gentle and radical. Choose joy. Yes, intentionally choose it, not because it's useful or productive, but because your spirit longs for it. Make a real list, not a to-do list. Enjoy a list. Write down the things that bring you aliveness, that awaken a softness in you, that serve absolutely no practical purpose except to remind you that you're alive and deserving of pleasure. Maybe it's painting without rules, singing in the shower at full volume, soaking in a candlelit bubble bath, dancing like no one's watching to your favorite childhood song, or curling up with a book that makes your heart ache in the most beautiful way. Then choose one thing on your list and do it. Not because you've earned it, not because you crossed off enough tasks, but because you are worthy of simply feeling good. And when guilt arises, as it likely will, pause, take a breath, place a gentle hand over your heart, and remind yourself, softly but clearly, I'm worthy of enjoying life without justification. This one small soul-nourishing act, embracing joy without guilt, begins to unravel years, maybe decades of emotional suppression. It's not just about feeling good in the moment. It's a message to your inner child. It tells her, you are safe now, you are allowed to play, you are allowed to feel good. Because healing isn't just about digging into the pain. It's also about reclaiming your birthright to feel delight in simply being alive. Exercise 9. Building confidence. The next time you feel that all too familiar knot of self-doubt rising, whether it's right before a difficult conversation, a creative leap, or a vulnerable choice, pause. Ask yourself, if my inner child were here with me right now, what would I say to help her feel safe? Then say those words aloud. Let your voice be the safe space she always needed. You might whisper, I'm right here with you. Or, it's okay to be scared. You can still show up. Or even, your voice matters. You matter. With each gentle word, you start to rewire the old belief that you need to be perfect in order to be worthy. Each moment of self-kindness becomes a seed, planted in the soil of your heart, that grows into authentic confidence. Because here's the truth. Confidence doesn't come from never falling. It comes from knowing, really knowing, that even if you do fall, you can rise again. And this time, you'll rise without abandoning yourself. Confidence is also rooted in affirming your worth. Find a photo of yourself as a child, one where you look pure, raw, and unfiltered by the world's expectations. Hold it gently. Look into that little girl's eyes. Then say, out loud if you can, you are enough exactly as you are. You don't need to earn love. You are worthy of kindness, of safety, and of joy. Let those words settle deep. Let them echo in the places inside you that never heard them when it mattered most. Repeat them often. Let them become your foundation. Because in truth, the journey back to your feminine essence isn't about striving or becoming. It's about returning. Remember, you were once a vibrant, emotional, intuitive, life-filled little girl. Remember, vulnerability was not your weakness. It was your gift, It was courage in its purest form. Remember, your intuition was once a compass. It didn't need proof. It simply spoke and you followed. And remember, love, creativity, and joy, the very essence of the feminine soul, have always been within you. They were never gone. Jung didn't write for modern women, yet his words remain a powerful light, shining across generations. A beacon for the silent, invisible pain that so many carry, living disconnected from themselves in a world that rarely allows their true essence to breathe. And healing, whether through psychology, spirituality, or the simple art of daily living, comes down to a single courageous act: stopping the betrayal of yourself. Stop hiding your pain. Stop performing adulthood in ways that erase your truth. Stop growing up in ways that leave behind your brightest, purest parts. Because when you sit with that inner child, when you allow her to cry, to sing, to daydream, to love without fear, you're not just honoring a memory. You are unlocking the original source of your energy, the sacred, instinctual, whole feminine essence. I sincerely thank you for joining me on this journey of awakening. If what I've shared has illuminated something in you, if it's helped guide you closer to that little girl within and stirred your feminine energy to bloom, please consider subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications. You never know, the next video might arrive just when you need it most.